Let me start with the global problems we have, which we want to actually face with the SAREP project. On the one side, we have, to my opinion, totally unsolved global climate policy issue. So we are not capable to really reduce the CO2 emission. You see this on the left side of the slide. The upper part, the red part, is the policy, which is decided upon, which is not really implemented, and the lower part, the blue and the green, is what should be done according to IPCC specialists. There's a huge gap between policy and science. So we have to do something, we have to do more. In the middle you see the global biocapacity part. That's what Madame the Minister actually addressed. We are losing our ecosystems everywhere in the world on a very quick space. So our ecosystems, our forests, our steppe lands, our savannas, they are dying. This means we cannot use them to protect the climate. We must protect them themselves. Our biodiversity problem are also addressed by the minister. We are losing our biodiversity, not only in Mauritania, also in Germany and Europe, worldwide. So our ecosystems are suffering. They cannot provide, for example, new material to our industries. And then, being from Germany, I can tell you we have a huge migration crisis, which is miserable for the people who get on the boats, pay a lot of money, and on the way they die. This we must address on a very positive way. And SAREP tries to do this. There's another very important thing. In Germany, we will have a lack of green carbon by 2045, which is in the range of 11 million tons. We know to get 4 million tons from recycling, but we do not know where to get the other 7 million tons. This 7 million tons of carbon could be grown in Mauritania and harvested and shipped to Germany. That's one of the business ideas of SAREP, to create new green carbon sources. And the market alone in Germany is huge because we are not using fossil carbon anymore. You know, European policy 2045, no fossil carbon to be used anymore. Nowhere in Europe. So we have three issues. We can trade certificates. We can give this world opportunity to fight global warming by compensating with an environmentally positive, socially positive initiative, which is a scale, and we can merge biodiversity and also kind of ecotourism. If we make the environment nice, people will come to see it, and we can organize a new supply chain for green, environmentally free, environmentally friendly carbon. This means we can do a climate protection strategy which is adding more value especially to Africa, especially to Mauritania, but also to Germany. For €1 climate protection, we get more and more collaterals, social collaterals, economic collaterals, and also we protect the climate. This is what you all know. This is what IPCC is saying. We have to get rid of the CO2 emissions. This is the upper part of the graph, and we also have to get CO2 back from the atmosphere. That's the lower part of the graph. And the scientists say first we have to get rid of the emission, then we start to take CO2 back. But we don't have time for this. In Germany we had temperatures of 42 degrees last week. Old people were dying in our elderly homes in Germany. All over Europe they were dying. So these temperatures are actually totally related to global warming, and we must start to fight back more quickly and more effectively. That's why our way, and now look carefully, we modify this graph to this. SAREP will contribute a large part of sequestration of carbon earlier as the scientists want it to happen, because we think we need it to happen now and to happen in a big scale. 100 hectare, 1,000 hectare is nice, but it's not helping the case. We must do it big to have an impact, and we must do it big to have an economy for it. That's why SAREP is 2 million hectares, not because I'm totally crazy. It's just we need it to be so big. And you know what we are doing, or what we want to do, is already happening. The whole Middle East, all the trees you have in the Middle East, they are irrigated. Yeah? They are growing because they get water by special technical systems. So it's nothing what we are inventing. We are just using existing experience and are optimizing it. We are making it more efficient. Yeah, and now, where can you store so much carbon in this world? You cannot do it in places where there are many people. You cannot do it in places where there's already something happening, like food production places, and you cannot do it in ecosystems because they already are fighting to survive. So the only place where you can add new carbon sequestration is in so-called deserted places, deserts. And this slide is not my doing, it's coming from an energy company manager in Germany. He told me, Peter, if you have a CO2 problem, you need to plant trees. And then the question is, where do you have space to plant trees? You look at the worldwide map, the yellow parts. And Mauritania happens to be a part of the yellow color in Africa. Here we have enough space to compensate Germany, compensate Europe. Yeah. So we can do everything we want if we create a new growth system. Soil can store carbon with roots and fungi and new bacterial life, but also above ground you can get a lot of new carbon storage capacities. And we are calculating below ground and above ground. So desert lands and desert soils as a carbon storage can be the game changer. I'm talking to you as a scientist, doing lectures to my students. I can tell you I do not know any other measure who really can save our climate on time. There is not really so much existing right now. That's why we need to go for things like this. Yeah, and then getting in more detail, the picture I took in Egypt, sorry for this, but we have been working in desert areas for many years. Now, in this place, you can store up to 100 tons of CO2 per hectare and year. And if 1 ton CO2 is 100 euro on a voluntary market, then you can store a potential revenue of 10,000 euro per hectare and year. Of course, you have to pay to develop the systems, you have to pay to maintain them, you have to pay people, but basically you can attract money for catching carbon and employ people to maintain the systems. So this land is a potential wealthy land in a new climate policy world. If you do this, if you start planting trees, and there's so many trees, some you plant for biodiversity, for species protection, some you plant for windshield, some you plant to produce protein, to produce biofuel, some you plant to have commodities like timber and building material. The demand for green carbon from biomass worldwide will increase tremendously in the future because we are reducing our ecosystems and we have a growing population and they will need biomass-related products and we can produce them here. And the good thing is, compared to other energy-saving strategies like renewable energies or hydrogen or whatever, planting trees needs people. So if you plant 4 hectares, you have to have 1 person to take care of this 4 hectares. He or she, with her or his family, can have an income with this 4 hectares. So it's a win-win situation. So all in SAREP, if we really plant 2 million hectares, we can create 400,000 jobs, well-paid jobs. So why are we in Mauritania? I think it's, to you all, it's more or less obvious, but to give you a German perspective on Mauritania, which maybe you're not used to see, You are one of the most seriously affected countries from the global warming effects. You are suffering the most. So you should have the most activity to fight global warming. Second, there's a refugee crisis impacting your country and impacting the countries which are the targets from people migrating from this place. And especially this place we choose, we know that there are 7,000 to 10,000 people migrating every month from this place to the Canary Islands. And each one pays $5,000. So Mauritania is a starting point for this migration. Mauritania has a lot of logistical options. You're so close to Europe. I don't know why people are looking to Namibia, to Chile, to Canada, seeing that Mauritania is so close to Europe. Means I never understood this. Even the Middle East, is with the Suez Canal and all the political problems, it's much more complicated than Mauritania. That's why I think logistically, it's a perfect place. And of course, you have a tremendous potential for renewable energies. Solar and wind, one of the best solar and wind conditions in the world, comparable to Patagonia and Namibia. So that makes you equal interesting for investment in new energy situations. Yeah, and this actually leads to the idea to ask the Mauritanian government for land to start catching carbon and to start creating jobs for Mauritania and to start creating business models. And you see the first talks, we were allocated this SAREP project area, and then after some finger waggling, now our area looks like this. Don't ask me why exactly, but this is now the final status which we expect to sign soon, that we can start working on our implementation. How do we implement? We will start taking out the salt from the water with renewable energies. And because we are doing it big and because we are using solar and wind, it will be much cheaper than what you are used to do. We can make it much cheaper than the water you get, for example, from the Senegal River. Water will be cheap because we make it big and renewable. And then after desalinizing water, we will pump it. Yeah? We will pump it through pipelines like this. They're 2 meters in diameter, and we will need 20 of these twin tubes to pump the water into the SAREP area. This is a huge logistical effort, but technology exists. This, for example, is these big machines. We use them in Germany in our lignite exploration systems, and they can do 1 or 2 kilometers a day, digging the trenches we need. Yeah, and then many people ask me, how can you irrigate trees in desert? You will lose so much water. Yeah, we have a lot of evapotranspiration if you use drip irrigation, surface drip irrigation. We are not doing this. We are using sweat pipes. We dig trenches and we put these pipes in 30 to 60 centimeter deep trenches, and we only water the roots. And the only water loss we have is what the plant itself needs to live. It's no water actually evaporated to the surface. That's very important. So we think we can handle this with 6,000 cubic meter water demand per hectare and year. And this, I think, is also very important because many people tell me it's such a simple project, planting trees. Yes, it's simple. We can plant trees. But to keep them alive is high-tech. Yeah? So we will have a very intelligent fertigation system, irrigation and fertilizer, and a very intelligent monitoring and learning system. Observed from satellite systems, they will watch the trees. Yeah? And they will decide by each tree, are you healthy? Do you need water? Do you need fertilizer? And this information will be fed into the AI system organizing the fertigation. So you will be the first country having a large-scale, intelligent, AI-guided cloud for fertigation. Just because we need to do it. With a project of this size, we need to be very intelligent to keep the trees alive. Because we sell the trees to companies and they must be sure that this tree is existing, healthy and growing. You know, in the past we have a lot of afforestation projects, maybe 80%, they did not really perform. So people are a little bit critical about afforestation projects because the trees are just dying and nobody cares. In our system, we cannot cheat because every tree planted is identified and watched. And if it dies, somebody will know and we have to replant it. So we cannot cheat. This makes our certificates very, very valuable. And our certificates are very valuable because the trees create jobs. Jobs, housing, shelter, education, and infrastructure. So this certificate, if you buy it, creates a lot of added value. This is how I want to do climate protection, a value-adding climate protection. Yeah, this is a picture from one of our partners. It's a Dutch company, Heinz Agro Trading. They already developed a whole irrigation system for the first 2,800 hectares, which are supposed to be built in the first 2 to 3 years, starting from now. And for the people not so close to afforestation, in a nutshell, the basic idea is we create new water. To my opinion, the only reliable and sustainable water source what we have in this world is water coming from the oceans. Our rivers, our groundwater is more unreliable. That's why this water is sustainable. And we add nutrients. Nutrients we are creating ourselves with SAREP, and then we're mixing it. We have a tree growing. The tree we can sell as a tree, as a carbon storage, but we also can sell parts of the tree as a commodity. We can do mix. There's a lot of, we call it bioeconomy. It's a new economy based on a huge amount of stored carbon. And if you store carbon as biomass, you have a lot of opportunities, chemical, physical opportunities. One opportunity is the reason why steel company, the big chainsaw maker, is supporting this project. They are looking for new green fuel. Now, people are operating machines. They want to have a renewable fuel to operate the machines. And you see it's a study from McKinsey from 2023, and the lower dark blue part is a demand for green fuel, prospection of demand for green fuel till 2050. So we need a huge amount of green fuel. Nobody knows where it's supposed to come from. So we know that the shipping industry needs it, the aviation needs it, and private cars and trucks, commercial, they all need a kind of green fuel as an addition to electric drive wherever it's possible. And that's why we will have a focus in SAREP in producing methanol. Not ammonium, not hydrogen, we will produce methanol. Methanol is a product from CO2 and hydrogen. If you marry it, you get methanol. Methanol is something you can easily transport. You can operate cars with it, you can machines, and you can use it as a chemical substance for the industry. Yeah, and what trees are we planting? For the Minister of Environment of special interest, the plants you already have in Mauritania. We go to your park in Nouakchott, we will take samples, then we will make millions of these individuals from this sample. So we will use the trees you have here, the best species. And one German company in my team, they are specialized in reproducing a lot of trees. They will actually build a lab to produce 50 million trees a year. 50 million trees. We need 2 billion trees to plant. Depending on the survival rate, which will be very high in our situation, we might need maybe 2.4 billion trees. Yeah. And we will actually produce these trees as shelter-belt trees, hardy trees, yeah, but also we produce trees to be sold as commodities. For example, for furniture industry, for timber. No? There will be a mixture what we are doing. And to get so many trees. No nursery in the world is capable to produce this. No. We even asked the Greenbelt Initiative. I just told the colleague from UNDP here, they don't have the capacity to produce so many trees, so we need to go on high-tech systems to produce trees. So we have one company, they produce trees in a lab. The trees coming from Mauritania, they're only reproduced in a lab. Yeah? And then you are going through a lab procedure, and you can actually produce 50 million trees a year, and this will create immediately 500 lab jobs. The jobs you see on the right lower side, in Mauritania, at the coast. Those people will be mainly female jobs because they are more diligent with the small plants, sorry to say, to our male friends in the room. They will do these jobs. This will be well-paid, highly educated jobs, and it's a €6 million investment, which is a part of our investment scheme. The trees we cannot immediately plant ourselves. We will sell to UN organizations or the World Bank or other places because trees are the solution to our global warming issue. So the phases, so what we are doing, the business fields, we will use solar and wind to desalinate seawater. This is a common technology. It's nothing special. It's a little bit tricky to do it with solar and wind 24/7, a little bit high-tech involved here, but the desalination process itself is simple. We want to make it big to get the costs down. That's the only innovation. Then we will use the water for irrigation. It's also no big thing, but we're using sweat pipes, and never ever anybody did irrigate desert trees on such a large scale. Now this we are a little bit in a scientific limbo, so we are testing a little bit, but we are quite sure it will be successful. We also will create a water supply scheme for the people in Mauritania because we will produce so much water that we can easily supply water to Nouakchott, for example, for a good price. Yeah? One industrial situation like the third commercialization here is producing 2 million cubic meter water a day. Nouakchott demand is 300,000 cubic meter, for example. And what comes next is, if you desalinate water, then you have a brine left. Normally people are bringing the brine back to the ocean, which is environmentally not easy, partially not accepted. So we will keep the brine on land. We want to mine the brine, because in brine, and you will have our own presentation on these two presentations, there is so many things which are needed all over the world that it's actually not clever to bring it back to the ocean. So we keep it on land. Then we have the biomass production, timber, charcoal, fuel, everything you can imagine, everything the market asks us to provide. Food and feed, we promised in our contract negotiations that we will produce food. Food for the people in Mauritania, local food, to reduce the import demand for basic daily commodities like stable food for people to live with, mainly onions. And then we have the fuel production, which is on demand for companies in Germany. They need methanol, and we can arrange this methanol production. 3 steps. 1 step should start this year. I would have liked to start last year already, but I'm still waiting for the final contract from the Mauritanian government. The money is there. Everybody is ready to start, so I'm waiting. I hope I can get it soon, then I can start with the first 16 million euro investment in 2026. Then the second step would be 3 years later. There's already 40,000 cubic meter water, 2,800 hectares planted. And the third one should be in 5 years. It's the first really large scale, really economic implementation on 100,000 hectares. So we are very ambitious because, I'm 64 and I don't have time to wait. We all don't have time to wait. If we want to do it for our next generation, for today's economy, why should we wait? So that's why I'm sorry, but sometimes I get a little bit impatient with politicians who are waiting, especially in Germany. Yeah, and this is something you will hear two interesting presentations about the brine mining part. You see, this basic idea is seawater. You have a lot of it, yeah. And then you have a lot of renewables and land, and if you combine this, you can create a huge agroforestry system. You can create a huge photosynthetical system. It's a huge asset you have if you combine this. You only have to make it nice, that the money is marrying your project. Yeah, and then you can create a lot of revenues for your country and for the climate and for the people. And the side effect is that you can go for brine mining. The second phase of our project is a small phase, can create enough magnesium to fully supply Europe. And Europe is desperately looking for clean magnesium, which is not coming from China. Because the Chinese can modify the price as they want, because 90% of magnesium is coming from China. Our government has a strategy to diversify supply chain. So that's why there's a big interest of European industry. Yeah, business model, CAPEX, this will be your own presentation. Dr. Flesch will, in the afternoon, talk about in detail that you know that Dr. Heck is not a dreamer. He has a business plan which is based on assumptions which are common knowledge. So there's no dreaming things in this. And we so far do not need any cent from a taxpayer's pocket. So we are doing this project totally with private money, which is not easy, but which makes me proud, because taxpayers' money is unreliable money. If the taxpayers' government changes, they might not give you the money anymore. Business is more reliable. That's why we are working with business. And the first two phases together will be 250 million euro, and for this there is an investor. He is waiting, watching me, asking me, when do you bring the final consent of the Mauritanian government? Yeah, to give you an idea of the KPIs of the industrialized third phase, we can capture with 100,000 hectares at least 7 million tons of CO2 per year. This is a market value, depending on how you value a ton of carbon, from 50 to 120 euro, from 350 to 840 million euro per year. And there are people in the room that come from the carbon trading. They will in the afternoon explain in detail about the carbon market. Additionally, we can sell water to Mauritanian industry and cities. We can sell feed and food. We can sell biochar. The whole steel industry in Germany, they're looking for green biochar to substitute coal. But they don't have a source to get it. Then we have additional sales of magnesium, potassium, and natrium chloride, salt. And as I mentioned, methanol option, hydrogen, if you like it, and HBI means the pre-processed iron ore for green steel making. We calculate right now we can easily produce water for 50 cents per cubic meter. And we can easily get to our energy price per kilowatt hour of 2 to 4 cents. Rather, make it cheaper. These are very important data. To summarize, this is a green business opportunity. It's of course an environmental project, we're protecting the climate, but it's also a business opportunity. It means we invite the business people of the world to share their money with our idea. It's climate change and adaptation, very important. Madame the Minister said it, we must do something against desertification. And this must be done big and quick. And then regional development, the people in the interior region, and we will hear it from Mohammed Yeslim Bayhat later, they are waiting for the project. They are waiting because this is for them an opportunity to create a totally new life. And we can create new biomass for the worldwide demand coming from sustainable project development in Mauritania. So much from my side. I hope I could motivate you with these words and get you a supporter for SAREP. We're happy to have you here. Thank you so much for your attention, and whenever you have questions, feel free to ask. Thank you so much.